The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of Acuma, its board of directors, its management staff, or its members. The podcast discussion presented is conversational in nature and for general information only.
Hello and welcome to Acuma's On Point podcast, a series focused on sharing the stories of people who are making a positive impact in the credit union mortgage industry. I'm your host, Peter Benjamin. Today's episode is being brought to you by National MI. National MI is a private mortgage insurance company that was established with a mission to enable low down payment borrowers to realize homeownership while protecting lenders and investors against losses related to borrowers' default. Joining me today from National MI is my co-host, Ralph Remy, Senior Director of Client Digital Experience. Ralph, how are you doing today?
I'm awesome, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Hey, Ralph, I appreciate you being here. Your continued support of Acuma. Do me a favor before we get too much further. Give us an update on the latest and greatest of all things National MI.
Well, Peter, I'm glad you asked. National MI is obviously one of the biggest focuses for us is helping homeowners get into homes by, helping for those down payment borrowers that don't have a full 20% down. I'm sure you hear all the time about the myth that you need 20% down to buy a home. Well, we're here to help your members get the dream of home ownership by allowing them to put less than 20% down, as little as 3% down in order to purchase a home. Another thing that we're doing is our training. So we are very big, and that's near and dear to my heart. Yep. So it's trying to educate credit union loan officers, just anybody in the business on how they can be more effective, efficient, and ultimately educate our clients and members out there and home buyers on how to just be more ready for home ownership. So that's really the big things going on for us.
I love it. And, a lot of things that you mentioned are things that we're going to discuss today. I'm looking forward to introducing our special guest. Before I do so, we have a little Acuma housekeeping stuff. Cameron, how are you doing today? Please tell us everything that's happening over at Acuma.
Thanks, Peter. I'm doing great. And I'd love to give a little bit of an update. We've had a really great year so far. We've had 2 in-person regional summits and also 2 workshops. So both were fantastic, lots of collaboration, lots of networking. And now we're really looking forward to our annual conference coming up in about a month. That'll be October 1st. Yeah, October 1st to 4th. So it's going to be great. Great lineup of speakers, lots of sessions, a ton of networking opportunities, and really looking forward to seeing all our members out there.
Awesome. I keep saying it, and I know people are tired of hearing me say it. Probably, maybe not. But I know that they've attended an Acuma annual in the past. It doesn't matter if it's been Vegas or the Gaylord. And I know that we've been at the Gaylord in the past, but I promise you, you haven't been to an Acuma annual like the one that we have planned right now. It's going to be the best one that's ever been put on. Mark my words, the best one. It's going to be huge. But right here, I could say right here because you and I are actually DC area, but right here in the DC area, National Harbor, Maryland, it's gonna be fantastic. Anyways, let's transition. Someone that our listeners can expect to see at Acuma Annual is our special guest. She has also been, an awesome help with our workshops that we had in March and June. Just hearing her talk, hearing her passion for, the next generation of home buyers. Ralph, I know that you kind of brought that up with regards to, that's one of the purposes behind National MI. And I know that you have a good relationship with this person. And I like you, I'm pretty excited to talk to her. So, but without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce her. Our special guest today is Kristen Messerly, co-founder of First Home IQ. Kristen, how are you doing?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you so much for that intro and for having me here.
Absolutely. Hey, I enjoy talking to you. I really enjoy sitting through your sessions, hearing you talk about, what we need to do, the tactics, the numbers, the data. I want to get into all of that of what things we can do as mortgage lenders to help usher in a new era, a new generation of homeowners. So to that point, I guess let's really break down what we're going to discuss today is, what do mortgage lenders, specifically credit union mortgage lenders, need to do to attract a younger generation of home buyers? So, first off, I want to dive into that. But do me a favor, let's take a step back. Let's get to know you a bit more. So that's part of this podcast. It's getting to know the people who are out there making a positive impact in our industry. So do me a favor. What kind of started down this path? What took you down this path of one kind of we'll say founding, First Home IQ, even cultural outreach, your passion for this data that you provide. What started it?
Yeah. So I started actually as a social worker, and I did a lot of community organizing. I worked a lot with unhoused youth and then the immigrant community. And I just saw this really big need for further education and connecting with trusted professionals. So initially I did a lot of community organizing, community outreach initiatives, creating volunteer programs. And then I started a business that was actually, first it was educating like professionals in banking, also in healthcare and other industries. And then I started and I had a translation business. But all of that evolved into what I founded was cultural outreach. And that was creating partly homebuyer education. It's still in existence. I sold it to NAMBA a couple of years ago. But that was focused on the first-time homebuyer and we built community outreach initiatives and some of the homebuyer education. So it's really in that experience led up to founding First Home IQ, where we're focused on that education piece, but at a younger age. Our focus is on 16 to 21-year-olds. And so, yeah, I feel like it really combines my experience of community outreach with the education, but targeting an age where really, I think those initial early decisions are made.
That's awesome. So, I mean, you said that I'm gonna make sure I heard you right. You said the target audience for the education that you create is 16 to 21, right? So, I mean, last I checked, a 16-year-old's not legally able to enter into a contract to buy a home, right?
Not to buy a home, but they are making decisions about their jobs and their income. And those are the decisions early on when people start making mistakes. They start getting into student loan debt and start making decisions that do later impact their ability to buy. And I think there are actually a lot of people that are ready to buy or want to make plans to buy early out of college, or even don't want to go to college. They want to make career plans that are going to, influence their ability to buy homes. So I think that it's definitely targeting people before they're ready to buy, but it's also really preparing people for homeownership. And then I'm also doing research with people who are actively buying homes, and that's people between the ages of 18 to 44. And that's been sponsored by National MI over the last 3 years. And so we're targeting people in the education program with the nonprofit at a younger age, but then we're gathering research through the first-time homebuyer age range.
That's awesome. So, I mean, sticking with that, what you're primarily doing, that 16 to 21, that's right now Generation Z, right? Mm-hmm. And then I guess with your partnership with National MI, you're still focused on, Gen Z, but also millennials. And if you're looking at 44, I guess there's that mini cohort that some people recognize, some people don't, of exennial. But that's interesting because you have, Gen Z is a rather large cohort, right? But nowhere near as large as the millennials, right? Millennials, here we are focusing on we'll say the older millennials. I guess at this point in time, they're 40 or so, right? 39, 40.
Well, yeah, what we have decided, there's different fluctuations around what people say is a millennial, but we've separated this between Gen Z and then younger millennials and older millennials. So the older millennials, I think we had said was like 35 to 44 or something like that. So yeah, they're on that range.
Okay, right on. So, what is the biggest group that you're really looking at with the research that you're doing?
On the research side, actually, the last annual report we did, we divided it equally between those three cohorts, Gen Z, and then younger millennials and older millennials, so that we were getting a good sample of what each generation or each of those segments are thinking and feeling around homeownership and financial wellness.
That's awesome. So, just out of curiosity, and I apologize if it's a silly question. Why the separation and why separate the millennials between younger and we'll say older? Because is it simply based on the fact that the older ones can also connect with Gen X as well as the younger ones can connect with Gen Z? I mean, what was the cause for the separation?
Not a silly question. This last time I was curious about if there was going to be a difference in the way that people answered some of these questions around their, financial challenges over the last year, their perception about homeownership, because we've gone through such a huge tech boom. And, for instance, a friend of mine who's 44 has a very different, I'm 35, we had very different experiences growing up with technology. And so I think that has a big impact on the way that we are perceiving, communication or our preferences around communication. But what is interesting is that we didn't see a huge difference between young and older millennials in the research. There were a couple things like younger millennials were more stressed about their finances. They had more anxiety around their finances than older millennials. I think there was one around debt, but I can't remember. But there were a couple, small areas where there was statistical significance, but for the most part, it really didn't differ that much.
Okay, that's awesome. Now I appreciate you kind of walking us through, what kind of got us here, right? So let's actually, move forward and talk tactics, right? Again, what can mortgage lenders, specifically credit union mortgage lenders, do to attract a younger generation of home buyers? And that's really the reason behind our conversation. And Ralph, Cameron, feel free to jump in whenever you have a question. I'll kind of start, and I'm just going to ask that question, the same exact question that we're going to try to answer, right now, starting out of the gate. What do we need to do to take those steps to start attracting that younger generation?
I think credit unions are so uniquely positioned to attract the younger generation. I think there really has been a disconnect in some way that I think is an easy fix. I mean, if you look at how what younger generations value, I mean, Gen Z especially values social impact, but that's something that even millennials, that was a big thing that came up with millennial home buyers and consumers. And credit unions are very community focused, I mean, that's the whole point. And I think that if we can communicate that in the brand and in the communication to younger generations through marketing and also even communication or just like conversation, I think that can make a big difference. But then also, if you look at some of the major challenges that have come up across all of the research we've done over the last 3 to 4 years, over 4,000 homebuyers, millennial and Gen Z, they are all saying education and lack of support are major challenges. And we're doing these mini reports this year with single women homebuyers, and we released a Gen Z homebuyer report, and even those, it just highlights this need for education and support. And I think that's a bit, we can dive into what those strategies specifically look like to talk about how to reach home buyers. And Ralph, I know you have something to share around that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Kristen, because I know one of the reports, and over the last several reports we've come up, you've talked a lot about the level of trust in the process, in the mortgage process, in the home buying process. And I think credit unions are very uniquely positioned, just like you mentioned, on having an opportunity to really earn that trust by using education. So can you talk through that a little bit? Because I think there's a great opportunity there that our listeners can take, I won't say take advantage of, but use it as an opportunity to be better out in their community.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. So trust has decayed across all industries over the past decade, really. But if you look at recently how Gen Z and millennials we're losing more and more trust in financial institutions and every kind of institution. But credit unions, as you said, are uniquely positioned as a community first organization. And so that does give you the opportunity to build trust a lot faster and for you to capture that market. So one of the things that we found was that Gen Z were significantly less likely than millennials, but even millennials were not as trusting of housing or mortgage professionals or financial professionals. I think Gen Z said 58% of them said that they were not trusting of loan officers, and I can't remember the number around. We have Gen Z, only 27% were likely to go to a bank or credit union for financial advice, and 44% of millennials. So there is this huge trust factor. And I think that it's so misplaced. I mean, there's such an opportunity here. If there's that many people that feel that distrust, how do we, mix this or flip the switch? And I think it is through education, as Ralph, you said. So making everything education first. Millennials and Gen Z feel that they lack the education and support to make healthy financial decisions for themselves. And so they're looking for sources for that education. And what happens a lot of times is they go online and they feel really overwhelmed. They don't know who to trust. I think it's important to put education out there online. Absolutely. That's a necessity. But I think also it's really important to be going out in person in your local community. So I think every credit union needs to have an outreach initiative where they are focused on partnering with local nonprofits or community organizations or businesses to say, we're going to have an expert come in and we can, provide some kind of homebuyer education or financial wellness education. And that is a great opportunity for you to share your brand as someone who is a trusted resource, who is going to provide support and who can be an educator through this process. But I think, sorry, go ahead.
No. So, I think, Ralph, you kind of took the question out of my mouth, and it's great that we're on the same page.
That's why I'm your co-host, Peter.
I know, right? And I love it. But, even if we let's look back, to this year, 2023, there are a number of bank failures, right? Mm-hmm. I'd be really interested to see, if you were to, because let's think about millennials, right? Millennials lived through, the financial crisis, the Great Recession, whatever you want to call it. I think that kind of started them down that path of distrust, right? Because they saw what bad actors do, right? But then, now this year, we had another run on bank failures. I'd be interested to see, if you were to do the same survey next year, if that trust changes. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine it getting any better, right?
Right. It's trending down for sure.
Yeah, right.
And the number was pretty high to begin with.
Right. It's sad, right? So how do we get education is part of it, right? But we still have to get past that milestone of making up for others' mistakes and regaining that trust, right? Is it really just all about education, putting yourself out there, showing to them, hey, we're not all bad?
Yeah. And I do wonder if part of the education, part of the community outreach initiative and the marketing campaigns and all of that does include something around how you are protected. Because a lot of consumers, I would say, even though their values are to go with a community organization or something like that a community bank or credit union, they want to support that, but they feel like that we saw all these huge banks fail and, in 2008, but then again, last spring. And now like First Republic was failing and bought by Chase, that those bigger companies are going to get bailed out. And so how do you communicate what how you're protected, or how you protect your consumers? And I think, we're just seeing these headlines and so that's my thought. What do you think about that?
I think it's interesting, right? So And one, I appreciate you saying 44 as a millennial. I'm gonna tell my wife that you said it was that I was a millennial at 43. So thank you very much for that.
Welcome to the millennial cohort.
No, I mean,
we're not so bad.
No. I mean, listen, I mean, I yeah. Anyways, we can talk about that.
Don't you think a 44-year-old is so different from a 27-year-old? I mean,
from a 27-year-old,
gotta separate those.
from a 27-year-old or a 26-year-old, yes. From a 30-year-old, no. We grew up with the same technology.
Yeah,
right? We did, right? We grew up in the same environment. We grew up with the Gulf War, right? We in many ways, the older ones went through the great financial crisis, great recession, just like you did. We saw our parents, who are more than likely boomers or the older generation of Gen X, work their careers and their work ethic, or in case my mom, she was a hippie. So I mean, we all saw it, right? I mean, so but anyways, going back to it's not about me, but going back to or my mental issues, whatever. I think it's tough, right? Because coming from, and I think Ralph, I think you're there, there with me. We and Kristen, for the most part, you're there, and Cameron, you're there too. We work in the financial sector, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we understand what caused this. At least we do our best to understand it. And when I look at credit unions and I see how stable and secure credit unions are and how community minded they are, and the measures credit unions do, the measures credit unions take to protect their members, I'm automatically going to trust a credit union. I am. It's just
right.
They are.
Consumers don't understand that, right? Like, I think that's my question to you is like, how do you feel like that is being communicated well to the broader audience?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kristen, because Peter, I think I'm in your boat in terms of age group. So I think you and I grew up in a time where it was very prevalent to understand the difference between a bank and a credit union. I don't know if Gen Z and even, let's call it, younger millennials, separating them as Kristen does, do they understand really the difference and what that all this you've been hearing in the news this year? None of them have been credit unions, at least so far. So
knocking on wood right there.
Right. But you don't. So do they understand that? And how do you create that level of education?
Well, so that's interesting, right? So I mean, I know, let's go back to when we were all in middle school, elementary school, actually probably middle school and high school, right? I grew up in a town, in DC. It was a good school system. We still had home ec. I know there's some school districts across country that have cut that because of budget reasons, right? But I specifically remembering, because I was like, I don't understand why I have to do this, but I specifically remember going to a home ec class and learning how to balance my checkbook, right?
Oh, that's nice.
Learning how to be financially responsible. That was literally one of the semesters in my home ec class.
Yep.
And I think going back to what Kristen said, it does start at a very young age. We'll say, I can't remember if it was middle school or high school, but that 16-ish age, I think that's a good mark, right? Teaching them how to be financially responsible, what to look for, how to do this, how to become homeowners is key. I always love whenever I see a credit union post, and it's not all, because credit unions are either community based or select employer group based, and I love seeing whenever a credit union has a table at a high school, and it's almost like a welcome to your first day of class. Here are some school supplies, stuff like that. Here's a flyer of what you need to know about a checking account. I love seeing that. And it's not always school or I guess teacher-based or school district-based credit unions. I love seeing that. I mean, that's part of the process. That's gaining their trust pretty early on, right? But so,
yeah,
go Cameron, please. Just
to add to that, I mean, you mentioned like middle school, high school, that home ec class, learning that. I didn't have that. And I'm Gen Z. So I think, Kristen, like, just as you've said, educating early on is super important. Even though a 16-year-old isn't buying a home yet, having that base, that knowledge to get to that point is super important.
Yeah. And if we're talking short term, that 16-year-old is still going to talk to their parents about this. And there's also all these teachers or whoever's involved in the community organization that you've come into that are going to hear you, meet you, and trust you. And I think in this era of distrust, we have to understand how to build trust. And that happens through, I think, a lot of in-person communication. There is, a whole world we haven't talked about yet with social media and, TikTok and YouTube being social or search engines on their own that Gen Z are getting a lot of their financial information from. But I think that that even shows how much they're following an individual and how, we've moved from trusting an institution to trusting an individual. But yeah, I mean, Cameron, I also did not have financial education in schools. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And then they come to home buying age, or they've delayed home buying age for so long. And then they've already made a ton of mistakes, and are not ready.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I am a homeowner, but among my friends, I'm one of the only ones, and many of them don't know where to start the process. And I think part of the reason that I sort of built that base is because I work in the mortgage industry. So I'm familiar with the process and just the steps that you need to take and the education that is available, but a lot of people aren't.
Absolutely. That's such a good point. One of the data points that I think it was a couple of years ago, and I know it's been validated sooner, but we saw that 1 in 5 said that they did not understand any step in the home buying process. I mean, that's any step, and I think that just to think how, and just anecdotally, my friends do not understand the home buying process. And even when I try to talk to them about it, and this gets into kind of the psychology of money and why, again, it's so important to start those conversations early. But when I talk to them about it, they glaze over really quickly. It's like a high stress. Money feels stressful, and talking about buying a home feels overwhelming. And so that's where, again, it just becomes more and more important to be showing up in that kind of in a trusted way. So.
Well, not only that. I mean, it's talking money or talking about money. It's almost like a cultural faux pas as well, right? I mean, that's it's either the case of the Joneses because you don't have enough, or you're embarrassed about what you do have, right? Even though it could be a very good income. Now it's interesting. I kind of just had this thought. I look at Cameron, right, and she's very successful. She was in the mortgage industry. She's done amazing things over at Acuma. She started up the YPN network for Acuma, and she's really doing an amazing job with that. But then just thinking about sitting in her YPN networks, those meetings, just listening in. I wonder if part of it is really going to tie back to the fact that you have this younger generation of credit union professionals, right? And I'll say credit union mortgage professionals that are still learning. They might be lower management, middle management, but maybe part of it is that that they don't know how to have their voices heard to the point where they don't have the confidence to go speak out and educate someone, help them, because they're still following the old guard, right? Is that maybe I'm going down a rabbit hole that doesn't need to go down, but
no, I love this rabbit hole because this is part of why we're building First Home IQ and part of like what the program is. And I would love, anyone's feedback as they're hearing this on how to help support people who are going out or want to be going out and delivering education, whether that be to a high school or whether it be to a companies lunch and learn where you're generating leads. But I think that there is this, or whether you're going, recording a YouTube video or getting on TikTok, but I think that there's like a big fear around how to shift the way that you've been doing your business. And especially in a market like we're in today, it is crucial that you make that shift. And I, part of what we're doing is to create a training program that helps support people in building that confidence.
It's awesome. We need to start transitioning, away. But before we do, I want to give you an opportunity to give final thoughts and give give you some final ability to relay some tactics that credit union mortgage lenders can do. But Ralph, Cameron, and any questions, any final questions that's been burning you that you need to ask Kristen?
Just from me, and I think we've gone over it a little bit, but I guess Gen Z is a big focus now, but and millennials as well. But would you say that Gen Z is like your main focus as far as research goes and just educating them earlier on versus focusing on millennials when they're actually at the home buying age?
That's a good question. We released a Gen Z homebuyer report, but we'll have continued research focused on millennials and Gen Z, and peak home buying age is still in the early 30s. So that's really crucial that we understand that segment as well. But I think that with the nonprofit, we're starting early because we want to have those conversations really early and set a good foundation. So that's the focus there. But I think that through what I'm presenting on, what I speak on and what I do research on, it will encompass both Gen Z and millennials.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
That was a good question. That was almost like, I don't know. Ralph, go. What are your final questions? Sorry. I had like this little brain fart that went boop. It happens. Anyways, Ralph, what do you got?
Yeah. Well, Chris, you talk about education, and we've discussed that a lot here today. From the very young age, from what people are maybe not getting in school to, where it leads you into the future. Is there really something, if there's really one thing that you're really going to stress to credit union team members out there and our listeners that they should be doing in order to help with this education, knowing sometimes that compliance gets in the way, if you will, not everybody can go out and do videos. Not everybody can do certain things, rather than having people so scatterbrained, like a lot of times happens, is there one simple area that someone should start? I think the number one question is, where do I start? What would you recommend on that?
I love that question, Ralph. I really do.
Yeah, that's interesting. I used to say video right away. And I still think that is important if you are able to do it. Whether that's, video consultations, if someone doesn't want to come into your office, because that at least provides you with this eye-to-eye contact, and that builds trust a lot faster than if you're having a phone call. And so I guess I agree with that. But the area I want to focus on right now is education through outreach. I do think that showing up in person in your community and documenting that, if you are able to then share that on social media, that's a great way to share your values and help build trust. But I think the more people see you in person and they'll listen to you, no matter what where you're coming from, or however big the cultural divide might be, they're still going to see you as a human being and be able to connect with you. And that's how I think you can overcome some of the challenges around how do I get into TikTok or things like that. Like, at least if you're showing up in person, you automatically build that trust and you're getting people that are listening to you. So that's an area that I would say is a high priority. Otherwise, I would also say just personalizing your advice in those one-to-one consultations. People are looking for people who can be true advisors to them. And so if you're just giving general education, they're going to feel a distance from you, and that they can find that online. But if you're incorporating their personal experience and their personal goals, they're going to feel like you're someone who's unique and is going to guide them through this process. And that's going to create loyalty and a lot of referrals.
I like that. It actually reminded me of a young professional network meeting that Cameron had a few months back. I want to say it was like the May meeting. And we talked a lot about marketing and branding and putting yourself out there. And the first thing that came to my mind was, they want to put themselves out there, right? But in many ways, they're scared to be vulnerable, put themselves out there, right? Put themselves out on social media. Mm-hmm. I liked your message, because it's almost like, hey, this is almost like you have to do this, right? If you want to be the source, if you want people to trust you, you have to do it, right? You have to be vulnerable so they do trust you, right?
Yeah. And I think that it's important one way to start is just answering common questions that you get from consumers. and creating a YouTube playlist that you can then share with people when they first reach out to you. Or I would recommend sharing your reviews online, because that tells people what other people have said about you, along with a link to that playlist, or at least a link to a video that's an introduction to you. Or better yet, and a custom video that's saying like, hey, great to meet you. I look forward to, talking to you. That would be like really hook someone's attention. And that's where it has taken me quite a while to get comfortable with that. I've focused a lot on in my customer relationships and doing that kind of custom video relationship. And it really makes a big difference. So even if you start with that before you get into, sharing a lot of social media content, that's where I'd start. But even with social media, even if you don't get that many views, those views are really quality views. So that's something I'd remember too.
And Cameron, you were shaking your head, as Gen Z, I think you're agreeing with her on that, right?
No, definitely. I definitely agree. And it was a big topic. A lot of people are just kind of scared to initially put themselves out there and do something like that. So great advice. And I agree. Video is huge. And I like your idea on the customization too. So it's not just the standard video. It's specifically for the person you're trying to reach.
Agreed. All right. Look, we need a transition. Before we do, any final words, Kristen?
Final words. I think just remembering that consumers today feel really overwhelmed and confused about how to start the home buying process. They're stressed when they are thinking about money and financial decisions. And so when you can come in and be a guide through what feels like a pretty dark situation, they're going to, they're not only going to trust you with their home loan and their financial decisions, but they're also going to make a lot of referrals. So I think just leading with that kind of personalized advice and education is going to be really key.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. All right. Well, it's time to transition to my favorite part of the podcast. Typically we do things like Jeopardy on a certain topic, or fun facts, or some trivia. Today, we actually get to do my favorite part. Now, I keep saying this. I looked at the list of podcasts that we recorded throughout the course of the year. That one we tend to do the least. So I am thrilled that we get to do it today, because they never let me do it. And they never let me do it with Cameron on, because this is the one that she hates the most. So
yes,
really, really excited for this. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Now, I asked Cameron only to have one prepared. So we're going to let her do her one and let her get out of the way. But the rest of us, we're going to go over just two of them. I think we have enough time for two. And the idea is, let's just have a good time. Let's laugh, and it's okay if we do, and it's okay to make fun of each other if it's a really bad one. So, Cameron, I'll let you get yours out of the way. That way, we're ripping the Band-Aid off.
At least I'm not judging them today, right?
I used to. I admitted I used to make her judge them, and she would always make me lose, which I think was retaliation. But it's okay.
Wait, have we told everyone what this is?
Bad dad jokes. Bad dad jokes. Yeah.
Bad dad jokes. Okay.
Bad dad jokes. Well, they're good dad jokes.
Non-dads, I will say. Yes.
I know, but that adds to the fun. That adds to the fun. All right, Cam, hit us.
All right. What is Forrest Gump's password?
I don't know the answer. I'm already laughing.
One, Forrest, one. I don't know. I ripped the Band-Aid off.
Good job, Cameron.
You did great.
You did. Good job. All right. Kristen, you're our special guest. You get to go next.
I cannot believe you guys are doing this. But have you guys heard about the pizza one?
No.
Oh, it's too cheesy.
Oh.
But what about the paper one?
No.
Oh, it's just terrible.
That's terrible.
That's the best I can do, you guys.
That was good. All right, Ralph, Ralph.
All right. Well, first one I can relate to all too well, unfortunately, but I thought the dryer was shrinking my clothes. It turns out it was the refrigerator.
Oh, nice. That's good. That's so good.
And, let's see what else. Well, if April showers bring Mayflowers, what do Mayflowers bring?
Pilgrims.
There you go, Kristen.
Oh, you got it.
That was good. That was good.
I like this.
All right. I guess it's my turn. Give me a second. My computer is acting a little weird, so bear with me 1 second. All right. First one. The past, the present, and the future walked into a bar. Things got a little intense. No? Okay. See?
I didn't get it.
Past tense, present tense, future.
It took a minute. It took a second there.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. That was all right.
They're better
All right,
when they take a second.
I need redemption. What do you call someone with no body and no nose? Nobody knows.
Oh, wow.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I like that.
Thanks. And I'll just give one more just for giggles as redemption. Every morning I announce I'm going for a run, but then I don't. It's a running joke.
I like that.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate you humoring me with my really, really bad dad jokes. I think I am 0 for 5 when it comes to these series of always having the worst jokes. But that's okay. That's okay. Let's go ahead and close out. Ralph, thank you very much for being here, being our co-host with us today. And again, thank you very much to National MI for sponsoring today's podcast. Truly appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you for having us, Peter. It's our pleasure to support you and the entire Acuma team.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. And, to Kristen, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on this topic of, attracting a younger generation of home buyers. I learned a lot. I know our listeners most certainly did. So thank you very much for being here with us.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And if I can direct people to the research that has been sponsored by National MI, you can go to nextgenhomebuyer.com. There's also a Millennial Resources page on National MI's website where there's also past webinars and things like that we've done to talk about the research. And then, of course, visit firsthomeIQ.com to learn more about the nonprofit and some of the outreach initiatives we have going there.
Okay, awesome. And kind of just, sum things up, everyone, we hope you enjoyed today's podcast. We love putting these on for you. I thought today's podcast was fantastic. I learned a lot. Really appreciative of Kristen and Ralph's time, and Cameron. Thank you very much for being on here with us today. And again, we know your time is valuable. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to just listen to our fun little podcast. Other than that, everyone, we hope to see you in a future Acuma event. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time at the Acuma On Point podcast. If not already, be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. For more great episodes and information, be sure to visit us online at acuma.org. And to get the latest updates, head over to our LinkedIn page.